Hello, everybody. Welcome into the pre-show here on the TDN Daily live stream. Can everybody hear me? How is everybody doing? Did everybody have a good weekend? Just want to do a quick check-in here. This is what, since we're recording the show, we'll do a little pre-show here while the stream will begin soon. Thing stays open. But just want to see how everybody is, how everybody's weekend was. Can everybody hear me properly before we dive into a Mock Draft Monday edition of the show? Very, very excited to do this today. You guys hear the kind of post-production version where I can edit out some of the things that maybe I say a word wrong or maybe don't make the point exactly the way that I want to. But we're going back to my live radio days with the show here today. What's up, Braden? What's up, Josh? What's up, Sam? How is everybody doing today? Very, very excited for this. We're going to do this every day at this time. What's up, Tuttle? 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every day. You're going to hear this show get put together, and I'm hoping that it's going to be extremely interactive, that you are going to be able to give me your thoughts in live reactions to what I am saying, and we can have a conversation. And for those of you that maybe didn't see the message in the TDN Premium Discord, or you didn't get my tweet, you just got the notification that we are going live, a Mock Draft Monday edition of the show. I have open on the other screen the latest mock draft over at thedraftnetwork.com, which you haven't gotten a chance to see today. You're going to want to have open, or you're going to want to have at least seen a little bit of it. Damian Parson of the Draft Network put together his latest edition of a mock draft. It is draft month. Figured what better way to kick off the live TDN Daily show with this being talking about a mock draft. Sam says, you were only coming out of my left earphone. You're going to make me fight technology on a Monday morning. Now, Sam, you say that. Are you saying that this is a me issue that I need to look at, or is it that you are having the technical difficulties with your headphones? I don't really know what to do with that information. I will do a quick check on my stuff to make sure that it is coming out of both headphones. But it certainly appears as if on the settings that I have here that I am coming out of both headphones. Braden, don't do the show before the show. Don't do the show before the show, because we have the quarterbacks are going to be part of this conversation. I have everything listed here, and I just showed my note page to the camera here, and I realize you guys can't see me just yet because I haven't transitioned over to that screen. But I've got the quarterbacks as part of the conversation. We've got my surprise picks, my favorite picks, and my least favorite picks. Those are going to be the conversation that we are going to have. I am only out of the left channel. Josh, this is interesting. Well, stand by, folks. For the first time we do this, technical difficulties here. But maybe we'll try this. I did hit a setting on my end. We'll see if that fixes things a little bit here for the show. So I just want to let everybody kind of file in here. Grab a drink, grab a coffee, grab a whatever you're going to be having for this. And again, we want this to be extremely interactive. You guys are going to be kind of seeing the production of this. So this part here, this banter that we are going to have back and forth, obviously is not going to end up in the live show. And when I transition over to the screen, we will have a conversation here. Okay, so sounds fine on my end. Some people are saying they're having the same issues. I did change a setting. Okay, so the setting worked. The setting was the perfect thing to hit. So we're glad that we're able to fix that. Rule, I see you with your John Cena reference. Sorry for those who have not seen WrestleMania or who do not care about WrestleMania. Unfortunately, we do not have a new United States champion in John Cena, so disappointing in that regard. That is much more balanced. Okay, glad we were able to fix that going forward. All right, is everybody ready? Everybody ready to have a conversation here and to do the show? Again, you guys are seeing the behind the scenes, the pre-show, and so I will transition into the full screen here, so you can see the fancy video background that we've got. You can see my camera with the lovely lights behind me. I know everybody loves to see that, so you should now be able to see me. You should be able to see the cool TDN Daily background that's floating around above and below me. So super excited to be doing this, and hopefully this can be interactive and can be a lot of fun. So looking forward to it here. I've got my monitor here on the other screen to make sure everything is working the way that it needs to make sure that everything is good. The chat's working. Everything is working in that regard. And then I have to press record on my end to start the show. So unless there's any other pre-show questions that anybody wants to sneak in here, if there's any other conversations not related to Mock Draft Monday and to TDN Daily that people want to have a conversation about, I'll give you a once, twice, once, going twice, sold, and then we will get this show on the road. So I'll give it a second. I'll let you file in maybe any last-minute questions. Maybe you're still waiting for that coffee to finish brewing, and then we will get into the recording of the show. But again, appreciate everybody here hanging out with us here on a Monday. And again, each and every day we'll be doing this here live on YouTube. Hello, Jamie. That's the boss is here. That's great. Great to see the boss. And the co-host of the brand new, which should already be in your podcast feeds if you are a listener of the TDN or were a listener of the TDN Fantasy Podcast, the first edition of Prospects and Props, co-host Jamie Eisner in the chat, a show about the NFL Draft, the show about gambling, the show about props, the show about football and gambling and the NFL Draft and everything in that regard. Prospects and Props in your podcast feed. And if you're not, search Prospects and Props or search TDN Fantasy. Sometime I don't think it's switched over yet, the name and the logo, so you might have to look up both. Braden asks, how was the Savannah Banana show? I will tell you, I was very skeptical going in to seeing the Savannah Bananas on Saturday night, mainly because I was going to be missing night one of WrestleMania. But I was skeptical of, is this really what, everything I see on TikTok and everything I see on social media, is this going to be as entertaining? And I took my girlfriend's daughter, who wanted to see this so badly. She just started playing softball. She was looking forward to seeing the Savannah Bananas. We surprised her on Saturday with the tickets, and she was very happy, very excited to go. And I'll tell you, folks, the comparison that everybody makes of the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball, I don't think does the Savannah Bananas any justice for the entertainment that they put on for 2 hours. They've got all sorts of rules that maximize fun. The game can only last a maximum of 2 hours. Each inning only counts as its own self-contained game through the first 8 innings, where if you win the inning, you win a point. And then in the 9th inning, all the runs count as points. It is crazy. I got Eric Gagne. Didn't even know Eric Gagne comes strolling out of the Savannah Bananas bullpen to throw at one point. It was so much fun. Rate the women's championship refs on a scale of 1 to 10. Now, Sam, there were 2 women's title matches. I did not see Sunday's title match. I saw Saturday's title match. The ref in that match was fine. That match was a 15 out of 10 on the scale. Rahul, I am not hoping that the Aaron Rodgers news drops in the next hour because I don't have Twitter open. Maybe I should have Twitter open here so you can get this kind of live reaction on the show. But I'm kind of hoping that we don't have that because you don't want to hear that reaction and blow up the entire show. We don't want that to happen. So with that being said, I think I've answered all of the pre-show questions. I now have to hit the record button on my end, and we can start this show and talk about the latest mock draft over at the Draft Network. So if everybody is ready, to go and have a fun conversation here on a Monday, let's get to it. So I got to press the button here. Stand by. And welcome in to the Monday edition of the TDN Daily podcast. Chris Schubert back with you here once again on the show. For those of you listening in the podcast feed, hope you all had a great weekend. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. Hope you are excited that the page has turned and it is draft month. We are here. We are counting down the days to the NFL draft. For those of you in the YouTube chat, hanging out with us on YouTube for the live recording, the live video edition of the show, hope you are having a great day as well. We were talking in the pre-show a little bit, some of your off-the-wall questions, but hope everyone's having a great Monday, a great start to their week. So a lot of fun. Again, if you missed a couple of the episodes last week, you didn't hear the news, for those of you in the podcast feed, live YouTube versions of the show every day, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're on YouTube. We're hanging out. The comments are going wild. We got all sorts of questions floating in there. We were talking about the Savannah Bananas in the pre-show, so a lot of fun can be had in the pre-show and hanging out with us on YouTube. But again, hope everybody had a great weekend. We've got a very fun show here today for you, a Mock Draft Monday edition of TDN Daily, and I figured with this being the first edition that was going to be live on YouTube, that was going to be live in video form, that we could talk about some mock drafts. And the latest mock draft from the Draft Network, from Damian Parson, kicked off April with a mock draft, and we are getting ever so closer to that day when we find out who the Carolina Panthers have taken with the number 1 overall pick. Lots of questions already filing in the chat, asking me what I would do if I was in charge of the Panthers, talking about the Texans. We will get to all of it. And the way we are going to break this down here on the show today, we're going to do it in a couple of different sections, I would say. We're obviously going to talk about the quarterbacks. Those are the big storyline right now because we don't know what is going to happen with the number 1 overall pick. I also have listed here, I will show it off to YouTube. I have my notes here, my notes for the show. We've got my surprise picks. I think maybe the team fit or where a player went that was a surprise to me. We've got my favorite picks. I've got 2 of them for you, and then my least favorite pick. And throughout the course of this conversation, if you're hanging out with us in the YouTube channel, please throw your comments in there, and I will weave them in as we go through the conversation. And again, I think the place to start here, if you don't have the mock draft open, if you haven't seen the mock draft, you're going to want to head over to thedraftnetwork.com and have that open while we are having this conversation about the mock draft. Damian Parson worked very hard on the April edition of the mock draft, and we will start with the quarterbacks because I think that is the place where everybody would like to start. It was the focus of the latest edition of the Prospects and Props podcast. If you haven't listened to that, myself, Jamie Eisner, launching a new podcast today in your podcast feeds where we talk about NFL gambling, NFL draft. Listen, don't be, excuse the podcast listeners, we got the chat being upset about what is being referred to as a nightlight in the corner here, okay? The light is just so I don't trip and fall in the middle of the night if I have to come in here to do something. It's just a motion light, okay? And there's a lot of motion in the room, so it's gone off. Easy there, chat, easy. So we've got the quarterback conversation that we're going to have. We've got surprises, favorites, and least favorite. And again, the chat is going to troll me here throughout the course of the show. Not a surprise that the background, my backdrop, the subject of the trolling of the YouTube comments. So Damian put this mock draft together. And, of course, we will start with the quarterbacks because they are the biggest conversation. They are the biggest needle movers right now because I think as the top 10 picks of the draft iron themselves out and where the quarterbacks go inside that top 10 is going to dictate a lot with the way the first round plays out. So here are how DP sees the quarterbacks in the latest edition of his mock draft, the way he sees the quarterbacks playing out, and then we'll dive into my thoughts on where these quarterbacks sit. So at number 1, he's got C.J. Stroud of Ohio State going to the Carolina Panthers. Now, I will tell you that tracks with the mock draft from last week. That tracks with the consensus of the betting odds right now that C.J. Stroud is the favorite. That tracks with a lot of the trends that we see right now. The Houston Texans, Bryce Young, quarterback out of Alabama, going number 2. We will talk about the Houston Texans. I have more to say about my big talking point that they should not take a quarterback with the number 2 overall pick, I will emphasize that even more so here in just a second. Indianapolis at pick number 4, selecting Anthony Richardson, quarterback from Florida. And this one might be a surprise, although the trends, the latest rumors, the latest buzz tell us that maybe we should start thinking about this team as a candidate for a quarterback, although I don't know if it will be where they're currently picking at number 7, but DP with pick number 7 has the Las Vegas Raiders selecting Will Levis. So 4 quarterbacks inside the top 7. That tracks with everything that we have seen recently in that regard. The order, C.J. Bryce, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. That tracks with the way we've seen the odds trend with this. Now, again, I think anybody who's going to speak from a place of certainty about the way that this is going to play out and speaks from a place of certainty with the order of these 4 quarterbacks, I think is being disingenuous, right? I think it's very easy, and I'm going to do it here on the show, and raise my hand and say, we don't know. We don't know what is going to happen. Nobody knows what the Carolina Panthers are doing with the number 1 pick. I don't think the Carolina Panthers know what they're doing with the number 1 pick just yet. This is going to be an extensive process. They made the trade up from 9 all the way up to 1 to box everybody out, to put themselves in a position to not be able to have their quarterback taken from them. They don't want... They've boxed everybody else out. Nobody can get in their way. But I still think this is an extensive process. I still think they're going to spend the next 20-plus days or so having that conversation. And I see the Sports Nut put in there a question of, if I was in charge of the Carolina Panthers, who are you taking at number 1, Bryce, CJ, or Richardson? Now, you did leave out Will Levis. I feel like that was by design. And I can't answer that question because there's a lot that goes into the way Carolina is going to be thinking. You have David Tepper, and we know David Tepper has been looking to get a quarterback since the moment he has taken over as the owner of the Carolina Panthers. This has been the golden goose, the white whale that they have been searching for, is to get themselves a franchise quarterback. And so when that has been the mantra, that has been the thing that they have been searching for since he has taken over, you can convince yourself of any of the 3 names that you're mentioning. Now, I'll tell you, you brought in a new head coach in Frank Reich. You've put together one of the more impressive coaching staffs, one of the more impressive coaching staffs we've seen in recent memory with what they've put together on both sides of the ball. I understand the talking points of everything that Josh McCown, the quarterback coach, has said about different quarterbacks. But to me, you need to blend the idea of who can help us win now, because we've put together a roster that can probably win a division that is wide open for the taking, and also maximizing your long-term ability. And with that being said, I can't fault them if they ultimately take Anthony Richardson. I couldn't fault them if they take Bryce Young, if they believe that the ceilings of those two players are higher than maybe the other two. Maybe Will Levis moves in there as well. I'll tell you right now, I would not want to be, as somebody who's been in this situation before where their team has been, needed to take a quarterback for the last decade plus. I wouldn't want to be making this decision. There are different making these quarterbacks and differentiating between them is a tough task, because there are two buckets, I will say, that these quarterbacks fall into. You have bucket number one, that is the production at the collegiate level, and that is where C.J. Stroud and that is where Bryce Young fit, right? They are the guys that produce at the highest level of this group in college. National championship pedigree, college football playoff pedigree. You got Bryce Young who won a Heisman. I mean, you have championship level pedigree at the collegiate level from both of those quarterbacks. Then you have the upside guys in the other bucket, the Anthony Richardson and the Will Levis. Guys that maybe didn't reach the collegiate success that people thought they could, but you're betting on the tools, you're betting on the traits. You believe that those guys have a higher ceiling than maybe a C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young. I will tell you, within those two buckets that I just gave to you, inside of those two buckets, I think there are mini buckets that we are seeing play out here over the last 6 weeks or so. Because in the bucket of the tools and the traits, betting on the higher ceiling in the Anthony Richardson and Will Levis conversation, doesn't it feel to you listening to the podcast, the YouTube chat that's hanging out with me, doesn't it feel that one of those guys is trending in an upward direction and one of those guys is trending in a downward direction? Doesn't it feel like Anthony Richardson with his pro day, with everything that the rise that we have seen through this process for him, with hearing about how great some visits have gone, again, we already mentioned the pro day looking very good, that he feels like he is on the way up, where you have Will Levis, didn't participate in the Senior Bowl, was banged up, and he's watching other guys have better pro days, right? Bryce impressed in his pro day, Anthony Richardson impressed in his pro day, and so there was already kind of a growing momentum to say, maybe Will's not it, maybe Will is QB4 in this class. So again, inside that bucket, one guy trending upward, one guy trending downward. Then in the other bucket, the bucket of the proven collegiate track record, the trophy cabinet filled up for both of these guys, you have Bryce Young, who's got the size, the weight concerns, maybe checked the arm strength box at his pro day, looking very good. And then you got C.J. Stroud, who somewhat falls into the box of just being a meh quarterback because he's from Ohio State. Unfortunately, Ohio State quarterbacks have a track record of not having a ton of success at the NFL level. There are other quarterbacks whose tools and traits you can fall in love with. And so maybe there's not as much buzz about C.J. Stroud, yet the betting markets have C.J. Stroud, towards the top of those odds. I believe in some books he is the top quarterback, the favorite to go number one overall. That is where we're at with these quarterbacks. At least that's how I see them at this juncture, where there is two specific buckets, and I think within those buckets, there's buckets that you could put these quarterbacks into. And some comments from the chat. Braden talks about how we're getting to the point where some media are focused on Levis's bodybuilding. I mean, again, we are talking about everything with Will Levis. It's all over the place. It's all over the map. And again, in the latest edition of the mock draft, Damian Parson has him going 7 to the Las Vegas Raiders. And now we know, and again, I'll tell you folks, and I'm going to make a sport reference that maybe not everyone's a huge fan of, but for those of you that are maybe fans of Formula One, you will understand the reference that I'm making, because there's a point of the Formula One season where the next year's driver setups and which teams are going to have which drivers for the following year becomes a big talking point. Drivers are talking to other teams are talking to other drivers that are out of the sport or potentially getting back into the sport. We're talking about rule changes for next year. There is a common phrase amongst those in the F1 media about that time period where all of that happens. They refer to it as silly season. It is silly season where all of that chaos is happening. Folks, it's silly season. We have turned the page. It is April 3rd. It is draft month. We are counting down the days to the NFL draft. We have entered silly season. We've got rumors floating all over the place. The Titans are talking about trading up to number 3. Could the Raiders move up for Anthony Richardson after his pro day? Maybe they like Will Levis. Maybe they'll trade. There is stuff floating everywhere this time of year, specifically in this month during a year where we don't know who the number 1 pick is. Love the chaos, love the anarchy, love everything about what the next 20-plus days are going to be for all of us. That's just the quarterback conversation. I just talked about 4 guys. We went for 13 minutes. That's the chaos that can be at the top. And again, I think anybody that speaks with any level of certainty about the way that this is going to play out in 20-plus days, don't believe them. And I'm the first person to raise my hand and say, we do not know what is going on. Guess what? That's part of the fun. That's part of the chaos. That's part of the excitement that is the NFL draft. So those are the quarterbacks. Damien's got 4 quarterbacks. I'm checking off my boxes here to make sure I talk about everything. We don't completely sidebar. Those are the 4 quarterbacks. That's where Damien has them going. And again, I think Vegas is a team that is, the trends say, are going in that direction of could be interested in a quarterback. Now, I'm going to ask the chat a question here while we do this. Give me if you've had a chance to see the mock draft, give me your surprise picks from this mock draft. Would love to hear what you all think about this mock draft and maybe some of the surprises. Now, doesn't mean good surprise, doesn't mean bad surprise, just surprise. Just something that when I was scrolling through the mock draft and doing prep for the show, it made me, I perked up a little bit. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's a surprise. Didn't think DP would put that player with that team, or oh, that team picked that guy. Those types of reactions. Good, bad, indifferent, just something that was a surprise to you. I will start with the pick. I've got 2 of them written down here. I will start with the pick at number 14 for the New England Patriots. Not the position, not the fact that they went with a wide receiver with pick 14, but with the name and what this means for this player. Because in the latest edition of Mock Draft over at thedraftnetwork.com, Damian Parson, with pick number 14 to the New England Patriots, gave them Zay Flowers, wide receiver from Boston College. We talk trends are the theme of today's show. You want to talk about a guy who's trending in the right direction. Zay Flowers is a guy who is on the ascent in that regard. Buzz, the momentum train, like leaving the station for him. There's been a lot of that since the All-Star game circuit for Zay Flowers. I will tell you, the reason why this is a surprise for me is not the talent of Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is a very talented wide receiver. You do worry about maybe the size a little bit. But Zay Flowers would check in here in this context as wide receiver 2 behind Quentin Johnston. So Quentin Johnston for DP wide receiver 1. He goes 2 picks in front of Zay Flowers to the Houston Texans. But you have Zay Flowers as wide receiver 2. Jackson Smith-Njigba goes with the next pick. And I'm scrolling through to make sure I name all of the wide receivers that get selected in the first round. Jordan Addison goes at pick number 23 for the Baltimore Ravens. Scrolling through a little bit further, make sure I don't miss anybody. That's it. Those are all the wide receivers. So Zay Flowers being wide receiver 2, that's a shock. That's a bit of a surprise, to me at least. You've seen Quentin Johnston kind of be the standard wide receiver 1 for a lot of people. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba checks some of the boxes with a good pro day, and so I think maybe some of the concerns that people had of him falling to the second round because he wasn't on the field a lot last season could potentially be pushed to the side a little bit, and I'm not that worried about him. I got to tell you, I'll ask the chat this question. Those of you listening in the podcast feed, you can answer this question out loud as well. Doesn't it feel like Jordan Addison is just falling just because? Jordan Addison has been a good, productive wide receiver. Was a good, productive wide receiver to Pitt. Was a good, productive wide receiver at USC. And it feels like he is falling because he had been the wide receiver 1 in a lot of people's minds for a really long time, and he's just kind of stumbling down the board, and we're kind of forgetting about Jordan Addison. And to me, that would be a mistake. I feel like we're going to look up maybe in a year or two if this plays out this way where Jordan Addison slides and it's not one of the first 2 wide receivers off the board. We're going to be like, kind of overthought that one a little bit. Kind of maybe should have read a little bit more into the fact that Jordan Addison was a very productive wide receiver at the collegiate level and should have probably drafted him. So that's one for me. The chat, a bunch of people mentioned Mozzie Smith was a big one. Sam mentioned that. Josh has Mozzie Smith. Seems insane to me. Thinks he's a lot closer to Damian Harrison than Dexter Lawrence. We've got some Drew Sanders to Buffalo as well. Bijan to New Orleans. Don't worry. Bijan to New Orleans makes it into another category here in just a little bit. Don't you worry. The other surprise for me, Not that I'm upset about this one. This one, we give DP a round of approval, a round of applause, the seal of approval, because this is one of those guys that DP, I'm with you. This guy deserves more love. I love the team fit. I love the player. I love the problems that he's going to cause for teams, and that is Luke Musgrave, going number 22 overall, right after the Miami Dolphins forfeited their pick with the 21st overall pick. Luke Musgrave to the Los Angeles Chargers, which would make, and I just want to double check because I did the math in the pre-show, Luke Musgrave, tight end out of Oregon State, tight end 1. And DP, you tell everybody. You make sure everybody knows that Luke Musgrave is tight end 1 because I'm with you. He is my tight end 1. He's big. He's athletic. A guy that big with that kind of size shouldn't be able to move that fluidly. He impressed at the Senior Bowl. Again, the only question about Luke Musgrave would be the health, the fact that there's not a lot of tape for him, only played in, 2 games a year ago. Those are the concerns that you have with Luke Musgrave. But overall, you've got a athletic, high ceiling, big size prototype at the position that you could give to Justin Herbert. That would be pretty good. That would be pretty scary for teams in the AFC that have to play the Los Angeles Chargers on a regular basis, specifically the teams in the AFC West. Sam, in all caps, echoing me when I say the Houston Texans should not draft a quarterback. He says don't draft a tight end in round 1. I mean, how could you say no to Luke Musgrave? 2 tight ends go in round 1, I believe, in this draft. Michael Mayer goes 29 to the Cincinnati Bengals as well. But could you imagine Luke Musgrave? That size with Justin Herbert would be a problem. We're going to talk about Justin Herbert a little bit later in the week. Got a fun concept for everybody. We'll talk about the quarterback contract landscape. We've got a couple of guys, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, and Joe Burrow, all eligible for contracts. So we'll have that conversation a little bit later in the week. So those are my 2 surprises. My favorite picks. These are my 2 favorite picks, and there have been some conversations about these players in the chat. I love, and everybody knows this has been a brand guy for me since getting a chance to see him in person for a couple of days down at the Senior Bowl. In some of the shows that we did after the Senior Bowl, I talked about this guy. I've made it clear to anybody that will listen to me, I love this guy at this position. I love the fit. I think this team, getting a guy like this would be awesome. But Doug Peterson and the Jacksonville Jaguars adding Julius Brents, first-round corner with pick number 25. And I love the fact that Julius Brents is undergoing a rise late in this process that doesn't feel driven by hype, doesn't feel driven by just buzz and rumors. This guy has balled out throughout this process. He had a great week at the Senior Bowl. That momentum carried into the Combine, which can carry into your pro day. Again, if you start your hype train, if you start your momentum train early enough, that buzz can carry you. And again, Julius has got great tape from K-State. He's got the size. I mean, you throw on the tape of Julius Brents and you see the size that he is able, the length that he's able to cover. Maybe not as fast as you would like, but that length can make up for a lot of those things. And I think in this Jags defense, it would be a very welcome sight to have somebody like Julius Brents to be able to shut down opposing teams' top wide receiver. So I love that. Love to see Julius in the first round. He's one of my brand guys. Glad to see that he's getting that first round bust. And then another guy for me, another Senior Bowl guy. Love those Senior Bowl guys that I get a chance to see up in person. And boy, has there never been a better player, and the way that he plays that I think matches with a city and the way that they identify with their football team more so than John Michael Schmitz going number 20 overall to the Seattle Seahawks. You want to talk about a guy that fits the way Seattle wants to play. They play tough. They play physical. They build at the lines. That's the way that they are designed. That's the way Pete Carroll has set up this team since he's gotten there. And John Michael Schmitz plays with a nasty streak that is infectious. He gets teammates fired up. He gets people standing on the sidelines fired up. This is a guy, and again, you sign Geno Smith to the big-time contract. You're going to want to protect Geno Smith over the next, 2 seasons at least of that contract that you think he's going to play out. Let's say maybe you do flirt with the idea of taking a quarterback with your top 10 pick. I think they pick, 5, 6. They might take a quarterback there as well. So long-term, you're going to want John Michael Schmitz to protect whoever your future quarterback is, but also you want that guy to be able to protect, Geno Smith in the short term. So that's a big one. That's another one that's a really good pick. So those would be my 2 favorites. Those are, two that really stood out to me. And I love Musgrave, tight end 1. I thought it was a surprise that he was DP's tight end 1. Okay, we are going to close up the show with discussing my least favorite picks, and we will get to some of your maybe questions, your thoughts on the draft, the mock draft, maybe things that I missed in putting together this show. My least favorite pick, and this is tough. This is very, very tough because I understand that people are going to be upset with me because I love, in capital, I will write it down here for the YouTube chat, and I will show it to everybody. I love this player. Love. All capital letters. Love this player. Think most teams should consider drafting this player. Think most teams would be better off with this player on their team. Not sure I love Bijan Robinson being the selection at number 30 for the New Orleans Saints. Again, love Bijan. Think Bijan is a top 5 player in this draft class, and that might be doing him a disservice. He would be an impact starter on all 32 teams. He would just be excellent. Would be just going to be a great running back in this league. But we got to discuss value, needs, where you're at in your life cycle, everything that's going on. The New Orleans Saints just signed Derek Carr to a big contract. He's their quarterback moving forward. They're starting a window with him. They do have Alvin Kamara, although there's a looming suspension that exists here potentially for him with those legal issues. I look at a team that's got other things they need to address, other areas of concern. I also don't know if they will utilize Bijan in the right way for him to be successful. To me, I get it, and I see it in the chat. Crush brings up a very valid counterpoint to the argument that I'm making. At some point, value is value. You're right. If Bijan Robinson's on the board at 30, it's going to be tough. Scouts are going to look at each other, executives are going to look at each other in the room and be like, what? I didn't expect this. I didn't expect Bijan to be here. What do we do now? We've got like a top 5 grade on this guy. What do we do? He's here. Inside, we're picking 30. He's here. What do we do? I get it. That conversation's very real. That conversation will happen if this scenario plays out. But it just feels as if the Saints have other things that they need to address, other areas that they need to help support Derek Carr more so than getting a running back. And as much as we love Bijan, as much as I think he would be a franchise cornerstone for a lot, if not all, of the teams in the NFL, it's still not one of those positions that is viewed as a top tier. You have to have a home run player at that position in order to win a championship. The Kansas City Chiefs just won a Super Bowl. Isaiah Pacheco is a great player. Was what, a 7th round draft pick? You don't need to invest top-end capital in that position to find success. And I think that's the issue that I have with the pick. Again, I think it makes sense from the context of it's another offensive weapon for Derek Carr. I get it. But I just think with all of the other needs that they have, I think they need help on the defensive side of the ball. They lost, a ton of guys in free agency. I think they need help with a little bit more with the protection of Derek Carr. I think they need some help with the wide receiver position as well. They've got other needs that they need to address. Now, I'll tell you, I'd feel a little bit better about it if they trade. This is weird to say. I'd feel better if they traded up for him. If they were like, this is our guy, we're going to go up and get him. But to sit here at 30, let the board fall, it just feels weird to me. This feels a little weird to me to make this selection. They don't need a running back to find success. And Josh mentions it in the chat. If you signed Derek Carr, you were expecting win. They don't need a running back to do that. And again, even if Alvin Kamara is suspended for a little bit, what do we think that suspension is going to be? 2, 4, 6 games at most, maybe? Again, we don't know, but you're still going to have Alvin Kamara. And so isn't there a little bit of redundancy at that point when you've got other glaring needs? If the Saints were the Philadelphia Eagles, who are picking at 31 here in this draft, now you can play the game of, like Crush said, at some point value is value. Yes, Howie Roseman doesn't draft running backs. Yes, they have a way that they've gone about doing it. But you're sitting there at 31 and you're like, holy smokes, we've got Bijan Robinson available? Well, let's go take him. Yes, and Crush brings up a good point that they got the pick from the Peyton trade, so in my head it hurts a little less. I get it. But again, they didn't have a first-round pick because they've been giving those picks away. And so they get a pick back. We got to use it. We don't have these picks. We didn't have a pick. We've now got a pick. We got to make the most out of it. We got to make the most out of these picks. So to the podcast listeners of the show, greatly appreciate you joining us here on the show. Again, the live version of the show on YouTube, so you can see the video version. You can hang out with me and everybody in the YouTube chat. Thanks to you for rating, reviewing, subscribing, following along with us on this show. It has been a lot of fun. The video version, very excited to bring that to you. Very excited to see where this grows from here. So for those of you listening in the podcast feed, want to thank you for joining us here on the show today. Hope everybody makes it a great rest of their Monday. I will talk to you all tomorrow. Now, for those of you here in the YouTube live stream, I'll hang out for a couple more minutes here. We'll chat. But so I see some comments here in the chat. Plus, the Saints O-line is getting old and injured. Yeah, I mean, they're just they've Trevor Penning maybe didn't develop the way they wanted to in year one. You're expecting more from him, but they've got a group that they're a little bit it's older. It's a veteran group. They need to get some depth there as well. The roster's already old. We've talked about this. This is where the cap is a myth thing just kind of falls on deaf ears for me, because they're able to make the math work, but it doesn't. They still have an older roster. Don't draft a running back when the line is trending down. That's true too. How much success could they really have with that group? Josh Johnson, agreed. The only time you should draft a running back high is if you don't need them. I mean, it's one of those things where I think I can understand why when you're sitting there at pick 30, you would be thinking about it, and why it would be a topic of conversation. But I don't know. It wouldn't be for me. See what happened to the Steelers' offensive line. You talking pre-Le'Veon Bell, post-Le'Veon Bell? What are you talking about there, Sam? But yeah, hey, we've got a little bit of time. I don't have our TDN staff meeting for another 20 minutes or so I can hang out here for a little bit and have some conversation. I will tell you that the background behind me broke in the middle of the show, and I couldn't stop to fix it. So while we hang out and ask questions, I'm going to work through some of the tech stuff on this so that tomorrow we have a little bit of a better background, because my guy Rob worked very hard on the background, and it just broke. Oh, I didn't hit the loop button. There we go. I didn't have the loop button checked. Brayden, I have a question about pick 3. Would the Cardinals really trade that to a division rival, Seattle, if Seattle wanted to move up? So I appreciate the question, and the idea behind the question being that I think. Sorry, I'm trying to process your question and figure out where I stand on this. The idea being is you don't want to hand your division rival a franchise quarterback that you're going to play 2 times a year and could torture you, right? I think I would be more accepting of it if, in this context, I'm putting myself in Monty Austinfort's shoes here for a second. If I've got my guy, if I believe that Kyler Murray is a franchise-altering quarterback, and he's already signed to the contract, that's caked into me taking the job, and I'm pretty sure he would only take the job if he believes in Kyler. If I believe I have a franchise-altering quarterback, if I've got a top 10 quarterback in this league, maybe top 8, I got a guy that's mobile, I got a guy that's unbelievable arm talent that can do things that other quarterbacks in this league can't. If I believe that that's what I have at the quarterback position, if I have a unicorn at the position, I'm a little bit more accepting of the idea of trading a pick inside the division, knowing that the team I'm giving the pick to is more than likely going to take a quarterback. But that's the only justification I can give. Because if you're not sold on where you're at as a team, and you're kind of wishy-washy on Kyler, and you really feel like, I'm kind of stuck with the contract, and we're going to have to grind and scratch and claw to be able to be competitive, no, you don't want to hand your division rival a competitive advantage. But if you believe that Kyler Murray is a franchise-altering quarterback, then I don't think you worry about that. I think you just make sure you're getting good, appropriate value, and maybe you charge your division tax that forces them to give up a little bit more, and you just hope that you can make do with those picks to be able to make up the difference. Lance says, I hate that Julius Brents went in the first round, but only because I want to see him in Denver with the 67th. Lance, I got to tell you, even if he doesn't go in the first round, I don't think he's making it to 67. I think in Keith's mock draft last week, he had the Jets taking him with 43. And like top 50 feels like the ceiling or like the floor in my mind with Julius. I mean, I think he could go as high as let me get the draft order up and I can tell you. But I think there's a pretty good likelihood that he's a top 45 player. I guess I can get it if you think you're in getting a significant haul, but that's it. Yeah, I mean, you have to, again, you're going to have to charge a division tax, 100%. Crush. I think if the Cards feel like they win the trade in terms of value, then I don't think they should feel bad about it. Depends on the compensation. Maybe the Hawks have to pay more. Yeah, I mean, again, you're going to charge a division tax regardless. Tuttle, for being a first-round pick in Mox, Keely Ringo doesn't get talked about much the past few months. Yeah, I mean, Tuttle, it's a combination of things, right? It's a combination of there are other guys that have had a better pre-draft cycle. There is the fact that this is an extremely loaded and deep draft class, and so guys just kind of get lost in the shuffle, right? I mean, you've got Christian Gonzalez that gets talked about a bunch. Devin Witherspoon gets talked about a bunch. Joey Porter Jr. gets talked about a bunch. Deonte Banks has been a riser, I think, since we turned the calendar to 2023. Julius Brent's had a good Senior Bowl. They're just guys that the hype does leave the station for some guys, and just for Keely, it hasn't. It doesn't mean Keely's a bad player. It doesn't mean Keely's not worthy of a first round pick. It's just other guys have maybe surpassed him in terms of the talking points. I'm hoping Brent's hype can cool off so the Panthers can nab him at 39. Now, Philip, that's more reasonable than Lance wanting him at 67, right? I don't know. Again, I don't think he's going to get to 67. I pulled the draft order up here to be able to see, but I think of teams that need a corner. Like Houston could need a corner at 12. I mean, I think that's probably a little rich for Julius, considering I don't know who else is going to be on the board. Washington needs a corner at 16. I wouldn't be surprised. 18 for Detroit. I mean, 16, 17, 18, and depending on the way the corners fall early, Julius could slot himself into that lane. The fall for Ringo is a straight line down to round 2, plus a lot of teams want him as a safety, not a corner. Yeah, I mean, that obviously is going to dictate things as well. Again, I think just the overall depth of this corner class is by nature going to hurt guys, right? As guys rise, other guys have to fall in order to maintain the balance. Sam, listen, I know you want Julius Brents at 32. Again, that feels reasonable. That's reasonable. But 67, and I'm not picking on you, Lance. I'm just saying, Julius Brent's too good of a player to get to 67. If he gets to 67, it's going to be my version of what people felt about Tariq Woolen going in the 5th round. We just overthought that. We just overthought Tariq Woolen in the 5th round. I'm very glad that the chat, there's an overwhelming consensus here amongst the group that they want their team to draft Julius Brents. And that makes me very happy. I'm going to take a sip of water because I've been talking for 45 minutes and we haven't really taken a break. But go ahead. Get your last-minute questions in here. We'll hang out for just a little bit. Got to go edit the show and post it on the podcast feed for everybody. And again, this is the first one. We'll get better about getting you guys in the chat involved. Making the show a little bit more free-flowing. The idea being is I want this to feel like we're doing, sports talk radio. I'm talking about stuff. We get a comment from you that allows us to take the show in a different direction. But this was the first one, so we'll iron out some of the kinks with some of the video stuff as well moving forward. But I do appreciate, real quick, in all sincerity, really appreciate everybody that hung out here for the first one with us and to have this conversation, because it's been a lot of fun, and it makes my job a lot easier and a lot more fun when I have people that are reacting to what I say in real time, giving me things that maybe I didn't think about originally, and we can have a nice, cool conversation. So it's really cool, and so I appreciate everybody being here. Braden says, where are you on OBJ? Do you want him on the Jets where they are allegedly frontrunners? Yeah, so I mean, I think Odell Beckham Jr. is a very talented wide receiver and would help the Jets immensely. I'm skeptical of the price tag that he's reportedly wanting at $15 million, and I think the fact that he hasn't signed yet makes me think that the Jets are also not willing to pay that price tag. And so that's probably the holdup. That's probably what's making this slow down. But I think OBJ would be great. Again, I think the wide receiver room is weird right now because they obviously have Garrett Wilson. They signed Allen Lazard and Mecole Hardman, right? So those three guys you really factor in. They already traded away Elijah Moore. They cut Braxton Berrios. Denzel Mims still on the team. Corey Davis still on the team. I thought Corey was going to be an immediate cap casualty at the beginning of the year to save the $10 million, but he's still on the team. And so until they figure out what they're doing with the Rodgers trade, here's what I'll say, right? I still think that Corey could be in the Rodgers trade, And so until that trade gets done, and I see that Corey is or isn't in the trade, that will tell me where I think the Jets sit on OBJ. If they put Corey in the trade, then there's a spot open for OBJ. If they don't, then I think Corey's just gonna be on the team. And then at that point, OBJ's great, but you got too many guys at that point. I don't know what they do. Crush, I'm dreaming for Titman at 67 or 68 as well, and I know I'm gonna be sad. Yeah, Crush, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you and Lance can go hang out together because Lance ain't getting Brent's at 67, and I don't think you're getting Titman at 60. Titman might be a first-round player. I mean, there are probably some teams, and I think there are some teams that have Titman above John Michael Schmitz from an interior perspective. So, I mean, you saw John Michael Schmitz go 20 in DP's mock draft. So, or 20 wherever. I think that's where Seattle picks 20. So I have the order up here. Let me make sure I'm accurate in they picked 20. So, I think Titman could sneak very well back into the back half of the first round for sure. Back 10 picks or so. All right, I will make this the last call for questions, the last call for your thoughts. It doesn't have to be related to the mock draft. It doesn't have to be related to what we talked about on the show today. It can be anything you want to talk about football. If you want to ask some off-the-wall questions, feel free. But I will make this the last call for stuff. And again, we're doing this every day, 11 a.m. Eastern time. So we will have that conversation each and every day. So I will wait a second because what I see is a little bit delayed. The chat takes a little bit for you guys to hear what I'm going to say, and then you guys to respond to what I'm going to say. So I will wait to get those last minute questions in, and then I have to get So I know that there's a delay, so we're going to throw it back to the stream will begin soon tab, and then I'll wait till I see that on the end. Then I'll end the stream so you can hear all of my thoughts. Make sure we don't end the stream too early. All right. Just waiting. See if anyone's got anything here at the end. They want to. Okay, Crush asks, what do you think about the Titans possibly trading up to 3? Who would they be targeting, Richardson or Levis? It's a great question, Crush, because this rumor has seemingly come out of nowhere, this morning, that they are potentially interested in moving up to number 3. I am incredibly skeptical of any kind of information that we get at this point of the process that seemingly is out of nowhere. That doesn't mean there's not validity to it. It doesn't mean that the Titans aren't actively considering picking number 3. It's not to say that the Titans won't end up picking number 3. They could very easily make a trade within the next 24 hours and make me look foolish. I'm just skeptical of information that comes out of nowhere at this point in the process. So I don't know what to read into it. I think it makes sense. The Malik Willis experiment didn't go all that great last year, right? And they probably don't feel like he's entirely ready to go. And so maybe they fell in love with one of the guys, with the higher upside that they can sit behind Tannehill for a year. But where there's smoke, there's fire, and it just feels like it feels smoke and mirrors, lying season. Yeah, that's what this feels like to me. You're like, here, again, I don't know that this is happening, but you're telling me that the former GM the former assistant GM of the Tennessee Titans is now the GM of the Arizona Cardinals. And now, all of a sudden, the team is picking number 3, the Arizona Cardinals. They have that pick. They know they're open for business. All of a sudden, Monty Ossenfort's former team just so happens to be interested in the idea of trading up to number 3. Again, that's how easily I can connect the dots of this feels a little smoke and mirrors. Because everyone's going to be like, oh, makes perfect sense. The Titans know Monty. The Titans, very easy for them to work out a trade package. The two teams obviously have great workings because Monty's worked with a lot of people. It should be pretty easy to understand how each team operates. Boom, we can just make a trade. Everyone's going to be like, oh, it makes perfect sense. Titans moving up to number 3. But again, just feels too convenient at this point of year, right? Feels really convenient at this stage for that to be the case. So, again, could they? Absolutely. Would it make sense? I think so. But I'm skeptical. Taylor B says kind of off topic, but might be an interesting topic. The NBA just agreed to a new CBA. Is there anything in there that you might be interested in seeing in the NFL? Taylor, what a great question. I know that I will tell you, have been extremely busy. It was WrestleMania weekend. Baseball has started. I've been watching, every game that the New York Mets play, so I've been busy with that. Obviously, went to the Savannah Bananas game. We talked about that in the pre-show. So I saw that they agreed to a new CBA. I did not see the particulars, the details. So maybe that's something we can do later this week after I get a better gauge on it and I can read about it. But, yeah, that's an interesting topic to see if there's anything in the new CBA. Now, the NFL doesn't have a new CBA for another, I think, 5 or 7 years. I talked about this in Friday's show when we talked about the expansion of the NFL, that like they have a long runway before the next TV deal's up. I think that's like 3 or 4 years, and then the CBA is not for like another, like I think 6 or 7 years. So they've got a long way to go. Again, appreciate each and every one of you. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I hope you had some fun. That's the idea, is that we have some fun here and have these conversations. And again, this is supposed to be extremely interactive. So I appreciate everybody hanging out here, everybody giving their thoughts. That's what the idea of doing this is. That's what I'm going for. That's what the goal of doing this show live each and every day on YouTube is. So hope to see everybody here again tomorrow. Again, TDN Daily, if you joined in late and you want to listen to the rest of it, you've got the live version on YouTube. You've also got it in your podcast feeds as well. So if you could give this video a thumbs up, it would really help a ton. If you could rate, review, subscribe to the podcast and the podcast feed, that would be awesome as well. I would greatly appreciate it. So we'll be back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time, doing another one of these. And again, I appreciate all of you hanging out with us, and I can't wait to see how this grows and how we continue to have a bunch of fun here on a daily basis. So again, thanks to everybody for hanging out with us. Hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and I'll talk to everybody tomorrow.